Hello folks, welcome to el canal del channel Jose. Today we're going to give you an idea how we change the oil and the oil filter in this 98 Nissan Frontier. This is for a 4-cylinder engine, and with that we're going to be using a 14mm socket to take the drain plug off with a ratchet, and then we're going to be using the special socket for the filter to take it off and put the new one on. And we're going to show you how we approach on taking off the filter and putting the new one on, so that way you don't struggle. We're going to be using 530 weight full synthetic, and with that we're going to be using or catch a container to capture use oil that is going to come out of this engine. With that said, let's get started. So for us, what we do is we run the engine for a little bit. We warm up the engine so the oil gets heat up, and we don't let it fully get to the normal operation temperature, and then we turn off the engine and we let it rest for about 30 minutes to an hour, so that way the oil is more liquidy and it will come off as when you take up the plug, so it'll run off better. Because if you try to do it while the engine is cold, all that oil is more thick and it's going to take some trouble or more time for it to drain completely out. So we like to run our engines for a little bit and then let it rest for a little bit, and then so that all the liquid falls down to the lower pan, and then when we take the plug off it's a little warm and then it comes out. So on the passenger side we took the wheel off so we can show you where the oil filter is, which is right there. That white one is the oil filter. That's how we're going to approach it from the passenger side. And then on this side there's a oil drain plug right there, but we're going to show you in a close look. That is right there, and it's on the passenger side. And then we are gonna, that's a 14mm socket that we're gonna be using, and as it drains we're gonna capture it with the oil pan, and then we're gonna, once the oil comes out, we'll put the plug in. And then once we put the plug in, we move the container forward, so we take the oil filter off, and whatever drains off, it'll run into the container. But we're gonna put a cardboard on the bottom as well. So we take the 14mm bolt off, and that's the drain plug for the oil. Okay folks, so we have the used oil right here. So you can see it's dark black, and this one is the new one that we're gonna be putting in. So now we're gonna submerge these Q-tips in each one to show you the difference between a used and a new oil. And as you can see, the old oil almost covers the whole Q-tip, but the new oil still lets the cotton to be see through. So we wanted to expose the differences. We have a lot of miles on this oil. Now that we let all the oil drain out, we put the plug back on, and then we move over to the oil filter to take it off and put the new one in. So we have the passenger side, and this is the suspension, and this is the front of the truck. And right in this area we have to remove this piece of splash guard, and then we can see the alternator right there, and the oil filter towards the back tucked in. And that's the oil filter right there, that white one. So you gotta use a special tool to take it off, and we use a special socket for that oil filter. So now this is the oil filter we're gonna be putting in, and the part number is S7317XL, but the regular one will be STP S7317, and it sits right about like this, and it's right in there tucked in. And what we're going to be using is this tool. So we grab it and we spin it, and this is the F cap, the one that best fits on this filter. So we're gonna put it on, and this is where a ratchet or an extension that we're gonna be using to take it off from the outside, so we don't have to put our hands and everything because it's pretty tucked in there. So that's what we do. You want to be careful with that wire that is right next to it, because that's the oil pressure sensor, wire, and if you rip it, your light on the dash is gonna turn on because it's not reading any signal. We're gonna put the oil pan right below that, and we're gonna have a rack ready because we don't know where the oil is gonna run in the frame. It might run backwards, so that's why we got a tarp. So we put that oil cap or tool on it, and then we start taking it off. So now that we have put that socket or the tool for the filter, we put our extension with the ratchet, and we start taking it off. Now that we have taken the oil filter off, what we do is we clean around. We make sure it's a clean surface so we can start putting the new one on. And make sure that there's no gasket from the old filter in there before you start putting the other one. You want to make sure that this rubber is off from the block and is on the oil filter. Otherwise, you're going to overlap gaskets and you're going to have a leaking problem, and it's going to be a bad scenario. So you want to make sure that this gasket is not on the block and is on the filter. So one thing before you start putting your new filter on and you verify that there's no other gasket in there from the old one, what you want to do is we want to put some oil in this new gasket, so when you're spinning it, it doesn't bond against the metal and it doesn't bite and it goes bad. So you want to lubricate it so it spins freely, so it gets it right. It spins and then it seals right. So now that we have put on our filter, oil filter, what you can do is tighten it by hand as much as you can with one hand. Tighten it as much, and then that way you don't have to use tools to tighten it, because oil filter is supposed to be put in and tighten it by hand and then leave them. Because when you want to take them off, you don't have as much trouble to take them off. So you just want to make sure you tighten them good by hand. Now we're going to rub this Q-tip inside the filter and see what happens. You can see it's there's a coating that came out, and this is the oil. So it's time to change it. Now that we have changed our oil filter, what we do is we put all the splash guard back on, and we make sure that the filter is on, tying in by hand, and then the drain point is put back on and tightening it so we can start adding our oil. We are going to be using 530 weight full synthetic, and it's going to take 4 quarts. It recommended 3.7, but we're going to add 4 quarts so we can fill up the oil filter as well. So once you do that, once you start adding, make sure you actually get your gauge or your dipstick and you look into it, because that's the best measurement that you can get out of your engine. Don't just go by 3 quarts or 4 quarts. The measurement, that's why the dipstick is there too, so you can see a physical level of oil on the engine. So now we add the oil to it. Now we got the measurement and we're right at level. I want to show you that your oil measurement should be right about the highest point on this group lines by the H. That means high, and then the L is low. Your level should be here, closer to the highest point, right about where the seam of my glove and the thumb is, right about there. So now once you reach that, we are actually there. So we put our dipstick on, we put our inlet plug on. Well, folks, this was an idea how we do an oil change and an oil filter replacement on a 98 Nissan Frontier 4-cylinder. And the main thing is take your time while you're doing this. And what we had to do is we took the tire off so we can expose where the filter is, so you can get to it, but so we can get the camera in there. But you don't necessarily have to do that. But if you want to get more comfortable, you can take the wheel off, take your time, and do everything nice and neat, so you can do an actual good inspection and know what's going on underneath by the oil filter. And the oil filter that we used, it was STP, and it was the S7317XL. There's a conventional one that is just the S7317, and Fran makes it as well, but we couldn't find it on Fran, so we buy the STP extended life. So the oil that we used, it was 4 quarts of 530 weight, full synthetic. On tools, we use a 40mm socket for the drain plug to take it off and put it back on, and the special wrench for the oil filter. But you don't need a lot of tools. We just use the jack so we can take out the wheel and show you where the oil filter is and how you can get to it. But with that said, for our folks who are watching and haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. If you like our video, give us thumbs up, share it, and we'll see you soon with more videos here on the canal El Chano Jose.